You're listening to the Stephan Livera podcast, focused on Bitcoin and Austrian economics. This is episode 48 with Nicolas Dorier, who started a great project I wanted to discuss, BTCPayServer. Nicolas is also the creator of NBitcoin, a Bitcoin library for the .NET platform in C#. Here's my conversation with Nicolas. Nicolas, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, look, I've seen you've been doing so many interesting things and really impressive things, really, with BTCPayServer, and so obviously I had to get you on and get you to tell a bit of your story and tell us a little bit about, why you're doing what you're doing. So let's start with a little bit of when did you get into Bitcoin, and what was it about Bitcoin that drew you in?
So what drew me in Bitcoin is basically MTGOX. When this MTGOX crash happened, I didn't really give any shits, but it turns out that I was very surprised that Bitcoin was not dead after this. I didn't know what Bitcoin was. For me, it was just a startup money and just a scam. But because it was still living, even by people who lost money to MTGOX, I got curious about it. And once you start informing yourself over Bitcoin, you're never over. And it's maybe around 5 years I'm in this space, and still learning every day since the first question I asked. So yeah, that's what drew me in, basically.
Nice. And then what was it also that drew you into work in terms of working on Bitcoin? Because obviously I see you doing, you're working really hard with BTCPayServer. Someone with your skills could easily go work in some large tech company, right? You could go work for a FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, one of those companies, and probably earn multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why do you work on Bitcoin?
Well, because once you discover Bitcoin, everything seems a bit boring. So I'm happy where I'm in the case where I can basically find the right mix between flexibility, boredom, and salary in my work. Right now everything I'm working which is not Bitcoin is basically boring. So I can afford to push that away.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Now let's get a little bit into what it was that drove you to go and start BTCPayServer. I'd like to hear a little bit around what it was with BitPay that irks you.
Okay. So basically before the B2X episode last year, I was a big fan of what BitPay was doing. I was using their wallet, which was Copay, which was one of the best wallets on the market at this time. And I was pretty supportive of them. And I was a bit upset when they start pushing the narrative that it was a software upgrade instead of a hard fork, and try to push all their merchants to support this new shitcoin and telling them that it's Bitcoin. I thought it was very fraudulent behavior. And the people that were behind it didn't seem to care at all about it, and never bothered to apologize for this story. So basically I found out that Bitcoin, while it might be decentralized at the blockchain level, because Bitcoin is hard to program upon, lots of people end up depending on infrastructure provider, centralized infrastructure provider like BitPay or BlockCypher, or some centralized infrastructure provider. And at the end of the day, if everybody is depending on them, then even if you have a decentralized currency, you're still vulnerable to the kind of attack that Bitcoin is meant to prevent. So that's why I started working on BTCPay. I wanted to provide an easy to host infrastructure that everybody can run, so they don't need those kind of third-party services to run their business.
Excellent. And I think, Nicolas, it might be great if you comment on perhaps the difference in opinion in the standing of BitPay back in the early days versus the standing that BitPay was in sort of towards the end of 2017?
The difference of what, sorry?
In the standing, the way people looked at BitPay, the way people would help promote BitPay back in the early days, and then it changed, obviously.
Yeah. So back in the day, like the Bitcoin community was very supportive of BitPay, like I was. I think right now, like most of pure Bitcoiners, like just hate them and try to avoid merchants that accept payments via BitPay. So, but on the other hand, BitPay like become a bigger company and don't really care anymore about Bitcoiners. So I think it goes both way. Well, it's on my side right now. I'm less worried about BitPay. So like 1 year ago, they had like lots of people were depending on them. Nowadays, there is lots of competing payment processors. So not only BTCPay, but also like Coin Payment and Globy and like many others that start like fixing the gap that BitPay left in the market. So I think right now they are not really relevant anymore, and I think that's for the better.
Right. And now tell us a little bit about the narrative in a little more detail. Let's talk a little bit about what BitPay were trying to do in terms of how they were trying to change Bitcoin, whereas, say, the Bitcoiner type people, the average individual person, was not necessarily in favor of those changes.
So basically, I think their main idea was that the merchants that are using BitPay don't really care about all the drama about Bitcoin, so they can silently update them without too much resistance, because most of them like just want a way to get paid in Bitcoin and don't care at all about Bitcoins. But well, lots of Bitcoiner, we can tell that lots of Bitcoiner are like a stubborn minority, in the sense that if it ever happened that BitPay do this change, then pure Bitcoiner will never pay any merchants with this new coin. So like it means that we have a split and we have a new coin coming along. I forgot the.
I was just mentioning. I thought it'd be good to just touch on how BitPay were basically providing a different angle than what most Bitcoiners would have agreed with. Yeah. So they would say things like, "Oh, the network is congested, and this is the network fee."
Yeah. I mean, if you are a merchant and you don't care about Bitcoin, like you obviously believe what BitPay is saying, and if they tell you that the fees are high, then you don't complain. You have no way of verifying by yourself, and you don't really care as a merchant. Lots of merchants don't really care at all about Bitcoin. So, well, I understand their position. I understand what they try to do, but at the end of the day, like the customers, the Bitcoiner will never use such currency that is controlled by a few infrastructure provider. So, well, I understand what they try to do, but I think it's useless as long as customers are refusing to use this new coin. Then it doesn't matter what they try to do; it won't work.
Right. And I think it might also be good if you just tell the listeners a little bit around BIP 70 and, some of the contrast and the debate that happened on that particular BIP.
Okay, so BIP 70 is a payment protocol which aim to like remove, have a sort of protocol to pay a destination which does not involve copy-pasting addresses, and that unlock also some capabilities where a wallet can pay several destinations in one payment. So the BIP by itself was, so for lots of reasons, it has been specified in a way that is very, very bad. I think it's very bad protocol, but like for purely technical matter, so for example, they are using protobuf, and it also add a dependency at the application level about PKY infrastructure. So it's very, for people that want to implement their protocol, it's like lots of requirements. However, so this protocol I think is bad, but like BitPay added an extension to this protocol actually, which allow the merchant to tell what are the fees to the user. I think that this particular feature is not a bad thing per se. Like, I think it's a good idea that the merchant can communicate to the user the fees that he's expecting. It's just that the manner they did it, like without any, one-sided way, without asking to the community or without asking for feedback or improvements, like threw lots of people off. But I think at the end of the day, like having a way for the merchant to tell the fees is a good thing. So just to tell you the problem they are trying to fix, and with this new extension that they did. So when the network was congested, like customers were paying the merchants to a certain rate. And the problem is that in BitPay, if the transaction takes more than 1 hour to get confirmed, then BitPay decide that this transaction is invalid. And like then after the merchant need to send back the money, or BitPay need to send back the money to the customer. Okay, so imagine that you are in a when there have been lots of traffic when the blockchain was congested. Basically, lots of customers were paying. Transactions were not validated after 1 hour, so then you need to refund all those customers. But because the network is congested, refunding those customers take even more fees. So they were kind of stuck. So their solution was, we might be able to impose to the user which fees they need to pay to prevent this problem. And I think at the end of the day, it's a good idea, but just the way they try to push it and like completely removing the address turns lots of people off.
Right, and then let's talk a little bit about some of the troubles that cause people who are trying to pay with Bitcoin.
Yeah, so right now, their new payment protocol, like most of the wallets that we're using today, are not supporting it. So on my side in BTCPay, I made like some tool to translate, their protocol to a normal address that you can copy paste on another wallet. I saw also Lunanode. So Lunanode are using BitPay as payment processor. So on their side, they are proposing inside their user interface, they themselves coded a piece of code to extract the address from BitPay payment protocol and show it to the users. So like people are doing work around this, and I got lots of merchants that came to BTCPay whose primary reason was we don't want to deal with customer support that can't pay our product basically. So yeah, it turns lots of people off. I think it's a bad decision, but it's good for BTCPay. It brings us more people.
Yeah, sure, definitely. So I think the other thing I think we've got to obviously touch on, where you famously tweeted, "This is lies, I will make you obsolete." Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah. So when this happened, basically I understood that Bitcoin was in danger if everybody keep depending on centralized services. So yeah, I started developing BTCPay, and so myself as well as a Bitcoiner, I'd advise people to use BitPay to lots of customer and people I know. But basically, if you are a merchant, you integrate BitPay, you cannot easily migrate to another solution if you don't have developer in house that can help you with this transition. And like it takes time to test, it takes time to get it up. So my goal was I wanted to migrate everybody that I advise BitPay to open source solution without code change on their side. So I basically replicated the API of BitPay inside BTCPay. So like merchants that are already integrating with BitPay can just, seamlessly migrate to BTCPay without any code change to their backend. So that was my primary goal. I won't say I make them completely obsolete yet. Like for example, if you want fiat integration, you still need a payment processor, either like BitPay, though I will advise better one like, I don't know, Gluby or Coin Payment or like many other that has been created. But in BTCPay later, so I know that Rockstar Dev is working on the fiat features and integration to exchanges.
Yeah. Oh, let's start with let's talk with a bit of an overview around BTCPayServer and how to set one up, and then we'll get into some of the more detailed components of it.
So yeah, you want me to talk about BTCPay?
Yeah, just around how it's sort of what's the process to set one up, how tech savvy do you need to be to run one?
Okay, so good question. Basically, BTCPay, I took maybe half of my time coding BTCPay and half of my time trying to find an easy way to deploy it. So my background is mostly Microsoft. Okay, I always use Microsoft product. I love what they're doing, and in Microsoft world, like installing new software is quite easier in general than in the Linux space. For one reason is that in general, Microsoft software come in one big blob of software that you install on your machine, while in Linux in general, it's lots of different small tools that you're gluing together to get something that match your expectations. But the average user, you don't know how to properly, glue everything together to make it work. And you cannot expect normal user to read like a 10-page manual on 10 different GitHub pages on how to make those tools work. So basically, lots of effort has been to make BTCPay run on one command line. And actually, I try to remove this command line. So like, even if you are like a user that don't have any technical skill, you can get it running. So at first, I was using Azure as a hosting provider. And Azure allow you to have a sort of wizard which help you to provision a new VM and like install some stuff on it. And so I was using this. So you got a wizard where you can say, okay, I want Bitcoin, Litecoin, and I want Lightning Network. Please create the VM and give me the address. And so it was working fine. Just that Azure is very expensive and like not very efficient.
Yeah, so on that, let's talk about the range of cost options now that are available to say I'm a merchant and I want to take Bitcoin payments and I want to self-host. I don't want to use BitPay. What other different cost ranges or options available to me?
Yeah. So right now, the most popular one is like around $9 per month. So when I started doing it on Azure, it was $60. We managed to find ways to drop it to less than 10 USD per month. And like, it's really a very simple wizard, like you create an account on Lunanode, you fill out your account you can fill out your account credit with Bitcoin if you want. And then you just have to go to a certain page. There is a sort of wizard that you can follow up to say, okay, I want Bitcoin, Litecoin. I want LND as a Lightning Network. Please do so. You click and bam, like in 10 minutes, you already have your BTCPay that is running. So yeah, around €9 per month. And one thing, I think I can drop it to $4 with the new offer that Lunanode released recently, but I still need to make some tests around this. There is some people that are trying to push self-hosting at home BTCPayServer. So like basically you put BTCPayServer on a Raspberry Pi, and then you just run it at your home. You just open the port as it needed, and it just works. If you do this, it's more technical, but like you can drop the price to around $1 or $2 per month. Basically, it's the cost of electricity that it takes to run the Raspberry Pi.
Fantastic. And I think another thing that's really great that I've noticed with the BTC Pay community around it and the Slack channel is that it's very supportive. So there are a lot of people who are out there creating guides. So I know Bitcoin Shirt, or I think he changed his name now to Pavlinex. He made a really great guide. And you got guys like Rockstar Dev, and you got all these other people in the Slack chat. Talk a little bit about that community and how they're helping people set up their own BTC Pay server.
Yeah, so like the big contributors to this project. So there is so Rockstar Dev came first, then there was Bitcoin Shirt that came, and this day there is also Mr. Cooks that is very active. There is also BitPay that is doing lots of translation related work that is very useful. So yeah, it's growing, and so Rockstar Dev and Cooks are like, developers. They think about a feature they want, they just code it, and Bitcoin Shirt is like, trying to tie everything up together, like trying to document everything, making video of it to advertise it. Basically, it's like the one-man marketing team of BTC Pay. And he did very great work. He did tutorials series about, if you're a merchant, how to create your own WooCommerce, your own e-commerce website, how to create your own BTC Pay, how to plug them together, and everything from scratch. And so lots of people came on the Slack asking questions. And, we are not a company, which means that we cannot expand resources to have customer support people. So that's why we depends on having this Slack and the community, replying to each other's when there is problems. And it's working fine. So when I see problems, like lots of questions that come back, very often, like Bitcoin Shirt told me, this particular point, like lots of people don't understand it. So on my side, I try to fix the code so like there is less questions the next time. And like it's an iterative process, every 2 or 3 days I release a new versions, and it's slowly evolving in the right direction, thanks to all this feedback that we get continuously every day.
Fantastic. And you mentioned new features there, and I think now might be a good time to just talk about this fiat exchange component. So obviously the easiest way right now is if you just take Bitcoin and just accept Bitcoin. But obviously the reality is many merchants do not have prices denominated for their inputs. The things that they're buying are not in Bitcoin, so they have to convert it back into USD or whatever other fiat. Talk to us a little bit about what the plans are around that fiat exchange component.
Okay, so the main developer on fiat stuff right now is Rockstar Dev. So as a general rule, I never code something that I don't use myself. So for example, I never sell Bitcoin. I always hodl on my side. So I have no interest in the coding fiat integration myself. But like Rockstar Dev, for example, is working on it. And as far as I understand, I'm not sure because he didn't talk to me too much about what he's doing exactly. But the way he's thinking is, if you're a merchant, you buy some stock of Bitcoin on some exchange. So let's say you buy 1 Bitcoin on Coinbase. And when a payment is incoming into your store, immediately you sell, a bit of this stock of 1 Bitcoin.
Right. So it's almost like there's a float maintained on the exchange.
Yes. And so basically when the money is received by the merchants, then the money will be forwarded to the exchange, and the balance will be restored to 1 Bitcoin eventually. I think that's what he's working on.
Right. And my understanding then would be this is because, again, Bitcoin on-chain was not necessarily designed to function as a retail level payments network, and because of these difficulties that you might face around confirmation time, once a transaction is sent, it may not necessarily confirm instantly, or in most cases it won't. So that's why we need this sort of concept of a float held at the exchange.
Yep. So basically, it's so like I tell you before, BitPay, if the transaction doesn't confirm after 1 hour, they call this invoice invalid, and the reason behind it is between the time that the customer sends the transaction, between the time that the invoice is created on the merchant side to the time this transaction is confirmed by the network, the exchange rate is like changing a lot. So that's why that BitPay, like after 1 hour, if the transaction is not confirmed, they say, oh, the exchange rate changed so much that we cannot insure about this particular exchange rate. So that's why our plan is really to do like we receive a transaction, we convert immediately on the exchange, and then later the coins are like forwarded to the exchange. So it still means that the merchants is taking some risk on 1 Bitcoin because he has like a stock of 1 Bitcoin on the exchange, but at least it's calculated risk.
Right. And so the idea there, so tell me if you don't know the detail, but is Rockstar working with any particular exchanges on who he might try to set this up to work with?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure. I don't really know. I know he's working on this. I don't know if he's working with a particular exchange. I know that lots of exchange approached him to work around this, so I would say probably.
Okay,
but I don't know enough myself about it.
Excellent. So well, we'll have to get him on eventually. But yeah, go on.
Yeah. But the thing is that in BTCPay, it's not like there is a specific roadmap. It's more like different contributor want different features and just like get it done, and then we ship it. So there is no like we are a big roadmap and people sticking to it. It's just like a need and that you just code it.
Yeah, sure. No, I totally appreciate that. I mean, that's the nature of open source software. It's not like a standard company where there's someone paying you to do a certain function. But I think another area that might be good for you to touch on is just around this idea of getting from the broader Bitcoin, what we might call the Bitcoin community. Obviously, years and years down the line, there won't be a Bitcoin community, but for now, there still is. Are you getting a lot of support? Are you getting a lot of people who recommend, who kind of bring you new people who might use BTCPayServer?
Yeah. I mean, so BTCPayServer, like in 1 year, it like developed entirely thanks to the Bitcoin community. Like we didn't invested into any marketing. Like we didn't even had an official website since like last month. So like it has been entirely community driven, or like people trying it, talking to other people about it, and then at their turn they try it and like it, and then spread the virus a little bit more. So even for example, Bitcoin Shirt, that is our main, let's say, marketing guy in the team. He came himself because like he learned about BTCPay by somebody else in the community, and then tried it for his own store where he's selling t-shirt, and he found it very interesting. So like he's dedicating lots of resources to help spreading the virus. So it has been very organical, and like it's thanks to the community, and people just spreading the word of mouth. And I prefer it to be like this, because imagine that we invest in marketing and like lots of people come at once, because we don't have any support team behind it. Like this will quickly implode. But if the communities keep growing and growing, even if there is more and more question, it doesn't matter too much, because there is so many people using it by now that lots of people can reply to questions. So it's very organical growth, And I hope it will continue like this.
Excellent. And now the other aspect there is also around hardware. So I know I haven't looked into it too much, but I know Nodl were looking into this idea of putting in BTCPayServer software built into the hardware full node product. Can you comment a little bit on that?
Well, that is awesome. So there is Nodl it and as well Lightning in the box. There is several people trying to do this. So I'm very fan of this approach because it means like you go further, you own your own hardware. You don't even depend on one data center, and it's way better for the network. So right now in BTCPay, most people use Lunanode to host because it's the simplest one. But what if Lunanode tomorrow go out of business? And it can have a sizable impact. Of course, I can make other tutorial to other host provider, but if people run their own BTCPay in their own home, you completely remove this problem at all. Like you don't have a single point of failure anymore. The big challenge. So myself and my company in Japan, we will try to do some kind of box like this as well. But the main difficult part in this project is lots of consumer don't know how to configure their router. If you host a service at home, you need to configure what we call the NAT of your router, and so it's quite technical, so it's not ready for everyone. And on top of this, there is lots of internet provider that don't provide static IP, which means that you cannot just configure a DNS name to point to your home. There is solutions to this that I'm thinking about, but it's still a bit messy. I'm still wondering how to make it as easy as possible, and I don't have the perfect answer yet. Right now, people still need to be a little bit technical savvy to set it up with these boxes.
Right, and I suppose some of the other difficulties could just be if you live in an area where you don't have reliable internet that might drop out, or power might drop out, and then how would you take payments on it? That kind of thing as well. Yeah,
that kind of thing as well, but there is also some people that are asking, where they say, we don't really want BTCPay to be accessible from the outside. So it simplifies some stuff, but not everything. So, for example, if you want to accept Lightning payments, you need a public IP and a fixed IP to receive the payments. So, there's still things to think about. And indeed, if, for example, you want to accept Lightning payment and you don't have a reliable connection, then you have more problems. So there's still things to be fixed. I hope to push this to self-hosting at home, but there's some technical consideration around this.
Sure. And I suppose then the other angle is also, as Bitcoin grows up, we'll see more and more commercialization around some of these things, and we may start to see more and more companies and providers who come out and say, hey, we'll set up and configure the BTCPay server for you, that kind of concept. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I hope so. So Lunanode themselves, they created this simple wizard to create your BTCPay. Actually, this wizard is open source itself. So I think they are using Cloud Init. I don't really know what it is, but for provisioning new VM, they are using this Cloud Init tool. And they created this wizard where if you are a hosting provider as well using this Cloud Init stuff, you can just use the stuff that Lunanode did. And it can easily spread that way. But right now, I don't know how interested are other, host provider to offer this kind of specific service.
Right, but I guess it all helps out.
yeah, it will help out. But right now, I saw only Lunanode doing this.
Got it. I see.
Yeah, if there is another host provider that is interested into doing this, I wish they joined the Slack, and then we can all talk together about it and help them to do it.
Okay, excellent. And I think another good point that you were touching on earlier is just around, in general, the rise of self-hosting. So obviously that is becoming more relevant nowadays, especially with this whole Patreon shutdown, more and more people looking at alternatives. What else is required to help people use Bitcoin in a self-hosting approach? So, for example, making sure that their servers don't get shut down or other tech infrastructure, not just the payments component. Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, so it's very hard problem, basically. So here is the thing. For example, Gab right now is using, Gab.com is using BTCPayServer. And basically, recently, they have been like targeted by political opponents to try to shut them down, even if they did nothing wrong. And basically, the way it works is that they have some services hosted on some IP address, and then people are trying to find who own this IP address, and then complain to the owner of this IP address. And then this owner has better things to do than processing this sort of complaint. So they just shut them down. So it's very problematic. The only the only way to fix this problem is using Tor. One of the ways the simplest way to solve this problem is using Tor. If you are using Tor, then you're fine. They won't manage to shut you down. But most people don't use Tor. So you have another option that I will push people to, and it's related to those boxes as well. So one solution is you host your BTCPayServer box inside your own data center, okay? Except that you don't accept queries directly into your data center. Instead, what you are doing is you set up another server. So for example, a very small server on Lunanode. On Lunanode, you set up some SSH server, and you use a system what we call a reverse tunneling. So basically, what will happen is that if a user wants to go to your website, he will use the public IP of Lunanode, and Lunanode will forward the request to your backend server that is on some another IP that you control.
Right, an intermediate step.
Yes, and so basically if there is a complaint, so if people complain to Lunanode, of course Lunanode will shut you down. But you don't really have to care. You just go to another jurisdiction, opening a new server, and just resetting these tunneling things, and then you're back online. So then it becomes very unproductive to try to reach those IP owner, because it's so easy to pop up a new service. Because They don't own your data. It's only possible because the service provider don't own your data. Your data is owned by yours. So it's related as well to the boxes, basically.
Right, and I imagine the other way is essentially, if you're lucky, say Gab, they've managed to find a provider who just is willing to still continue hosting them.
Yeah, so it's good that they find it, but it will work until one point. We never know when it will break. But I guess if it breaks, they can jump to another provider as well. As they're getting more and more kicked, and that every time they get kicked, they learn more and more about this space, and they will become more and more resistant to it. Gabs.com, before trying to use BTC Pay, tried many other solutions. Basically, they tried every single centralized payment processor that they could, and MasterCard basically was pulling the strings to prevent them to service Gab.com. And at the end of the day, they become Bitcoin maximalists, because that's the only thing the only way for them to accept money then. So yeah, they become more and more efficient at it, as they can ban them, but at one point they will always come back.
It becomes a little bit like the story of the government trying to shut down torrenting, like say how they tried to shut down the Pirate Bay, but then someone keeps, making proxies and pulling it back up.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, as long as you own the data, as long as you own your own data in your own hand, then they can shut you down. You just have to find another way to get back online. It's eventually possible, So yeah, it's no problem, I think, about this. But well, it's still, right now, technically speaking, it's still a bit hard to do it. I will try to make it easier, but it's, I always come back in the sense of, on my side, I'm always coding only stuff that I use myself. And myself, I'm not targeting at this kind of behaviors. So I'm less motivated to work on it than, say, gaps.com or people like this. So if people are targeted and are willing to help me on this, it will be very helpful.
Right. Okay, another area, so you touched on this earlier, was just around the hosted options. So companies like Globy, OpenNode, CoinGate. Do you have any thoughts on the main trade-offs that a person has to think about when they're thinking about whether they want to use BTCPayServer self-hosted or whether they would go through one of those other options?
Well, so the other options are possible depending on where you live, depending the jurisdiction, and depending of your political inclinations. So if you're Gab, Globy, coin payment, or anything else, eventually will get shut down. There is no question about this. For people that are not politically targeted, I think they can be good solution, but because of the fact that you don't control your own key, what you can do with those payment processors are way more restricted. So, for example, BTCPayServer is not only useful for merchant, actually it's very good wallet. You can use it for as a wallet, and you depend on your own node, so you don't leak any privacy. You can't do this with coin payment or Globy or those kind of services. And we have other features that are pretty cool. So for example, we have the point of sales feature where you can very easily create, a very simple point of sale, very easy to, operate, and then create invoice out of this. It's kind of feature that is possible only with BTCPay, not with Globy. Or recently there is Mr. Cooks that created a crowdfunding application of BTCPay. I don't know if you have seen it.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I can send you the link later, but basically anybody can create their own fully customized crowdfunding page and and be public. And then people can just send Lightning payments, Bitcoin payments to it. And so it's fun, it's kind of fun feature like this that you cannot really do with centralized payment processors. And way more fun feature like this will come in the future in BTCPay. So keep tuned.
Yeah, it's a very exciting space. I think there's a lot of possibilities around this whole concept of self-hosting. Have you got anything else that you wanted to bring up around BTCPayServer? Anything to look out for coming up, or anything else that you want to bring up?
Well, there is also a very interesting thing with BTCPay is that because it's open source, there is some people that are just forking BTCPay, adding their own feature or adding their own design, and time to time merging the upstream changes. So if you're a business and BTCPay doesn't even match it, doesn't even completely match what you want to do, it's very easy to fork. And I plan to do it even more easier to fork in the future. So that's kind of flexibility that you can get from open source project, but not from other centralized payment processors. For the features to look out, so there is the fiat things that Rockstar Dev is working on. I can't say myself too much about it because I don't really know that much about it. There is cooks that have a pull request about doing permanent invoices. So the idea, so imagine that you are a freelance and you want to request a payment to your customer. The problem right now is like when you create an invoice with BTCPay, it locks the rate. The rate is locked for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So like if the user don't pay in 15 minutes, then you need to create a new invoice. It's not very user friendly. So like Mr. Cooks is doing a new feature where, it creates a simple page, a payment, he call that payment request page. So like you send a link to this page to your customer, and when your customer want to pay, just click on it. It takes the rate of the day, creates the invoice, and he can pay. So it's so like he can pay at his own convenience.
Fantastic.
And yeah, the last thing I will work is what we were talking about. A way. So you remember when I talk you about this reverse tunneling?
Yep.
Features that is to prevent people to be shut down. Actually, it's not only useful for people that are politically targeted. It's also very useful for people that want to host BTCPay at home because they don't have a fixed IP. So like if you don't have a fixed IP with this reverse tunneling solution, you can still create your own BTCPay and have a very easy setup, and you don't have to configure the NAT or that kind of things. So like it's not even useful for politically targeted people, but also for people that just want to plug the box at home and like that it just work. So that will be what I will work on in the short term.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's really fascinating to see all the ways these different technologies are kind of building out together and interacting in different ways. And you've got the hardware guys, and then you've got you guys, and there's just a really really interesting, what's the word, kind of symbiosis there in the way that some of the different products are kind of interacting together.
Yeah, it's always a question of in open source, like people are not paid, which means that they need to find their own motivation to code some features. So it can be profit related, like people selling boxes, they hope to make profit with it. Like people like Cooks did the crowdfunding app because like he himself has cool idea to code and want to raise money by doing this. So like when people are like customer of their own product, it gives like lots of motivation to code on it. And then as more stuff getting built, some other people say, oh, wow, what you do is pretty cool. I want to use it for myself and like maybe improve it. And then, little by little, the product become bigger and bigger. It's very organic growth, and it's the beauty of open source.
Yeah, I think you make a great point around how many people, they just want to scratch their own itch, and then that is what drives people to go and do different projects.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Have you got anything else that you want to get the listeners to know in terms of how they can, if they want to come and support BTCPayServer or anything else to consider?
Yeah, I mean, a very good way to help BTCPayServer is using it by yourself and see for your own case, like what is, the gaps of features that you would like, and like just discuss it on the Slack, get some developer motivated to do it, or like developing it yourself, like it's fun, and you don't have to be a merchant, even if you are a normal user that just want an easy way to manage your wallet, where you don't leak your addresses to third parties, then BTCPay is for you as well. So yeah, just try it, have fun with it, and like come on the Slack, sharing your experience.
Excellent. Okay, and where can people find you guys and find the Slack?
It's slack.btcpayserver.org.
Okay. Excellent. And also, obviously, your Twitter is Nicolas Dorier. I'll put the link, obviously, in the show notes.
There is also the BTCPayServer Twitter account as well.
Yes, I'll link that as well. So Twitter for that. Okay, excellent. Any final comments?
Yeah, as well, you can also send the link to our YouTube channel, because like we have a YouTube channel with lots of video to get started, like to play with BTCPay and that kind of stuff. So it's I send it to you by text.
Excellent. All right. Well, look, thank you very much for coming on, Nicola. I hope the listeners found it interesting to just learn a little bit more about BTCPayServer.
Yeah, I hope so. I think they will.
There you go. I hope you enjoyed hearing more about the BTCPayServer project and why Nicola started it. More importantly, I hope you'll be interested to go and try it out. So go and check out the YouTube channel for some how-to videos and join the BTCPayServer Slack and discuss with the guys. Links are in the show notes on my website, stephanlivera.com. Lastly, if you enjoyed this podcast, remember to retweet and share with your friends. That's it from me. Thanks, and chat next time.